Let's just start with kind of the Tableau canvas here. So this is what the start screen looks like in Tableau, and you'll notice it's built into three, oops, sorry, one second. It's built into three kind of separate sections here. So on the left-hand side here, this is your connection window. So this is where you go to get data, and you can pick from Tableau server or different file types. These are kind of like static files. You then have databases on servers or Google Sheets or things like that. And then this bottom section down here are data sources that you've saved onto your computer. Let me go ahead and, oops. Sorry, I need to hide the meeting controls. The middle section here is, you can think of this as your kind of favorites or your most recent workbooks. So you'll see there's some of mine that have pins on them. Those are ones that are going to stay in this list. The rest of them will kind of cycle out as you build more workbooks. So the most recent one I've done that's not pinned is this first one here, the fourth one over across the top. And then down the left-hand side, you have this discover pane. So I like to call this the propaganda section. So the first part is the training. So that's where you can get some additional training there. There is a great training resource called the Tableau Starter Kit, which you can get to through one of these links. I think it's under the Getting Started link. And then in the resources section, it's usually things like white papers or blog posts, things like that. And then down the bottom here, sometimes you'll see where, it's like in this case, it's asking me to download the latest version of Tableau. Sometimes it is visit of the day as well. So let's go ahead and get started here. Sorry, I hide the controls again. On the left-hand side here, let's choose under the connections section, let's choose Microsoft Excel and navigate to wherever you, whoops. Sorry. Okay, so navigate to wherever you saved the data source. Sorry, I just got a new computer today, so it's asking me for permissions for everything. And you want to pick the one that's called rat sightings, and it's an Excel file. Once you've selected that, go ahead and hit open. And I'm going to go ahead and bring the chat up on this side here. So give me 1 second. I need to remember how to bring the chat window up. That way I can see if you have any questions along the way. So bring up the chat. Okay, there we go. So now I can see the chat as well. All right. So yeah, if you get stuck somewhere along the way, just go ahead and let us know. So when Tableau, what Tableau does when it connects to the data is it tries to read the data and it makes best guesses as far as the data types that there are. So for example, you have this field called unique key. Tableau recognizes that as numbers. So it gives us this number data type. It then has this field for, we've got a field for the date. So that's when the sighting was reported. The complaint type is a string. We have the zip code, and you can see Tableau automatically picks that up as a spatial object or a spatial field. And then we have some more specific information about where the sighting happened, the borough that it happened in, and then we have the latitude and longitude, so the specific location where the rat was seen. One of the things you'll notice here, though, is that the created date field is a string. And so what we want to do then is in this field here, so you can see that that's a string. We need that to be a date field. So let's go ahead and click on the little ABC option there, and then change the data type to a. We don't really need to. We don't really need to care about the date and the time. Let's just focus on the date for now, because the reason I'm doing that is there's lots of records that are reported without a time. So we end up with a really giant spike at midnight, which doesn't really help us much for the purpose of this analysis. So it'll take a second because Tableau needs to, again, read the data. And we'll wait here and I'll try to fill the air with something to talk about. What we're going to end up doing is building some, we'll look at some time series data, so different ways to display time series data. We'll look at some categorical data, we'll look at some spatial data, and then we'll put it all together in a dashboard at the end. So after that's changed to a date field, down on the bottom left here, so down on the bottom left, I want you to go ahead and click this option that says sheet 1. So that's going to take you to the first sheet. And now you should see all of your fields here on the left-hand side. What Tableau's done here is you have this kind of divider line in the middle, and all that does is separates these blue fields at the top, which are called dimensions. And the bottom fields here are called measures. So Jason, what did we just do to change the date field? So if I go back to my data source, if you can watch if you see my cursor here, I clicked on the little symbol here where it probably says ABC for you. So click on that. And it was a string, just change it to a date field. Okay, and then click on sheet 1. So Tableau split it up into dimensions and measures. Now, typically dimensions are ways you're going to slice up your data. So that's going to give you rows and columns. It's going to add marks to the view. The measures are typically things you want to count. Now, in this particular data set, we actually don't have any measures. So we don't have anything like, the size, the weight of the rat, or I don't know, any kind of measure you can think of. But we do have this one called rat sightings count. So this is going to be literally the count of, or the number of rat sightings that are in the data set. So I actually am going to go ahead and let's describe that option, and we could see Tableau tells us a bit more information about this. It's a continuous measure. Let's see, the default aggregation is a count, etc. So you can look at more information. This is kind of like metadata about the field. So let's close that. First thing I want to do is I want to know how many rat sightings are in the data set. So I'm just going to drag the rat sightings count field, and I'm just going to drop it here in the middle of the view. And you'll see that we have 182,923 rat sightings. Okay, great. So, maybe we want to have this as a big number on our dashboard. So I'm going to click on the text field, and then I'm going to choose the 3 dots next to text. And I'm just going to click somewhere on that field, or on that text, so it becomes highlighted in blue. And I'm just going to maybe change it to like maybe 48-point font. I'm going to make it nice and big, maybe bold, kind of whatever you want there. But we're looking for a nice big number. And now it says 182,923. Okay, great. Just a nice number to kind of get us started. But, and then I'm going to go ahead and rename the sheet. So down here on the bottom left-hand side where it says sheet 1, I'm just going to double click on that to rename it. And I'm just going to call this number of rat sightings. Oops, if I can spell right. Rat sightings. But what I'd want to know is, well, what do these look like over time? So I'm going to create a new sheet by clicking on the new sheet icon at the bottom. So you have these 4 tabs, or you have these tabs across the bottom here, similar to like an Excel spreadsheet. And the first one of these 3 buttons on the right-hand side is to create a new sheet. And then the second one is to create a new dashboard. And the third one is to create a new story. We're not going to look at stories, but we are going to create lots of sheets and a dashboard. Okay, so let's start by dragging the created date field to the columns. And you'll see now we have 13 marks in the view. So down here on the bottom left-hand side, we can see the number of marks because we have 13 years in the data set. Let's drag the rat sightings count field onto the rows. And now we have a line chart. So Tableau gives us a line chart automatically because it's time series data. However, notice how 2022 is a big drop. That's because the data only goes through a certain part of the year. So I don't really want to keep 2022. So I'm going to right click where it says 2022, and I'm going to go ahead and exclude that point. And now we just have the rat sightings by year. I want to make sure that this 2022 is filtered out everywhere that I use a sheet. So on the, with every sheet that I use, I want to make sure that 2022 is excluded. So on the filter shelf, if you click the triangle, the little drop-down triangle on the right side of the blue field, go down to Apply to Worksheets, and then choose use all, all using this data source. Okay, you'll see we get this little cylinder type icon here. And all that icon means is that it's being applied across the entire workbook. So if I go back to my previous sheet, number of rat sightings, you'll see the number changed a bit, but our filter is on there as well. So that's what it used to be called a global filter, or it's a filter across the entire workbook. Okay, so back over to our time series. So we can see we have, we have the data by year. It's not particularly interesting. If we hit the plus sign next to the year field on the columns, so you see the blue year field, a little plus on the left-hand side of that, hit that plus, and now Tableau will break it down by year and quarter. Again, doesn't look particularly interesting because we see lots of cycles up and down. So it looks like, maybe in the summer Q2 and Q3 of every year, it looks like it spikes a bit more. So let's say we want to break it down by month. So I'm going to hit the plus sign next to quarter, and now we'll break it down. Tableau will break it down by month, but this doesn't look particularly good either. So what I'm going to do is I want to look at this just by year and month. So click on the quarter field that's in the middle, the middle field on the columns. And I want you to drag that off of the view. And now you should see the data just by year and month. Once you have that, right above the word month, you should see where it says standard. So this is the fit to the screen. So I'm going to, instead of standard, I'm going to choose entire view. And that's just going to make sure that all of the years and all of the months show up in the same view. Okay, so we've got something like that. That's not too bad. So let's call this one let's double click on the sheet name and call this monthly rat sightings. Okay, great. Now let's look at maybe some other ways that we could visualize this time series data. So what I want you to do is I want you to right click on the sheet name at the bottom. And then about halfway down, you'll see the word duplicate. So click on duplicate. Make sure you choose duplicate and do not choose duplicate as crosstab. Choose duplicate. And it'll give you just simply a copy of that sheet. Now, what I want to do is it's a little bit tough to see the patterns in the data here. So we're going to actually change this up a bit, and we're going to look at we're going to try to compare all of the years by month. So I want you to take the year field that's on the columns, and I want you to move that to the color shelf. And we get something like that. It looks like somebody kind of threw up on the screen with all of the different colors. But you can see, we kind of have this sort of seasonal pattern where we see June, July, and August. It looks like it spikes up. So not really surprising. Warmer months, there's probably more, maybe the rats like the warmer weather. I don't know enough about them. But there's probably also more people outside, so they're more likely to see rats as well. Anyway, the data is what it is. Now, I'm not going to use this one probably in the final visualization, but I did this because I wanted to see if there are any patterns in the data. So I want you to duplicate this sheet again. And this time we're going to create what's called a cycle plot. So take the year field that's on the color shelf over here on the marks card, and I want you to move that to the columns, but this time put it to the right of the month field. And what this is doing now is within the month of January, we're comparing all of the different years. So for January's, they look like they're pretty much always going up, right? So it looks like about all of these years, we can see that the trend kind of going from increasing across the years. So this is called a cycle plot. So I'm going to rename this sheet as cycle plot. Again, I don't find this particularly insightful, but it's just another way that you can kind of analyze the data as you go. Right click on the cycle plot sheet and duplicate again. And now we're going to create a heat map, because I think a heat map will actually take this information and probably make it a bit easier to understand. So let's leave the month field on the columns and drag the year field. Let's move the year field from the columns to the rows. and it looks pretty terrible right now. Take the count of rat sightings that's on the rows, and let's move that to the color shelf. Okay, so now we see something a bit more interesting. It almost looks like there's almost like a mountain in the middle of the colors. We can see it going up and back down. So, right, so kind of as it goes down, it gets darker, so more sightings as you go kind of down the view from 2010 to 2021, and kind of darker as you go from January to into July, and then it starts to tail back off again towards the end of the year. So I like this one. I'm not sure about the colors because when I think of rats, I don't think of blue. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the color button or the color shelf on the marked card. So click on that. I'm going to choose edit colors. And in my palette, I'm going to choose gray. And then I'm going to hit OK. So now we have a gray palette. Looks a bit better. And then I'm going to click on the color shelf again, and I want little borders around each of these to make them a bit easier to distinguish from each other. So after you click on the color shelf, in this bottom section where it says effects, in the border, change it from automatic, and I'm just going to choose the white option. Okay, for me, I just like the way a heat map looks like this. I think it looks a bit better. All right, so this is a good one. I like this one. So let's call this a heat map. And what I do as I'm building a dashboard is, or as I'm analyzing a data set and thinking about what my dashboard is going to look like, if there's a view that I build that I think I might use in the dashboard, I'm going to color code the name of that sheet. So I'm going to right click on the heat map title, the title for that sheet, and go to color, choose the color option. I'm just going to make that one green, because that's one I might want to come back to later. It's just a little visual indicator for me that I liked it. Now I'm going to go back to the number of rat sightings, the one with my big number, and I'm going to set that one to green as well. So far I've got two things that I like. Oops. Okay, so we've covered a few different time series charts here. We've covered just a regular line chart. We've covered a line chart that compares the years within each of the months, and then we created a cycle plot, and lastly a heat map or a calendar heat map. All right, I want to try one more thing though. So let's duplicate. I want you to right click on the heat map sheet, and let's duplicate that one again. Now, what I'm interested in, instead of the year this time, I'm interested in to know what day of the week people report them the most. So on the row shelf where you see the year field, click on the triangle. And about halfway down, you'll see an option that says more. You'll see years checked. So, and it'll say 2015 next to that. So go down to the more option below that. Scroll to the right and choose weekday. Okay, so now this is a bit of a different story. So people tend to report them earlier in the week in the summer. Okay, so this might be useful as well. So maybe I'll just leave it named heat map 2 for now. Okay. Before I move on, does anybody have any quick questions? I know I might be going a bit too quickly. Anyone? No?
How did you, when you made the heat map, you put, and it had, I'm trying to remember like the straight lines, and then you, I think, moved this count part, the green part, and then that's how it became the heat map?
Yeah, so I think I was on the cycle plot sheet, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then when you, okay, my mouse is really loud. Okay. Right, 1 second, let me switch over to a set of headphones. Give me just a second. I'm getting a demand from Luke.
Andy, every time you move your mouse, there's quite a big echoey noise.
Okay, is that better? I haven't moved my mouse yet, but the mouse is a bit scratchy on my desk as well. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it sounds the same.
Oh.
Which is, it might be worse now.
Okay, hang on. Let me switch back then 1 sec.
If I can answer your question about showing how to do the white outline on the heat map, I think that was the question at hand. If you go to your color shelf, there's an option to select a border, and that's what you'll want to choose to set that to white.
Okay, let's try this again. I put a book underneath of my mouse, so hopefully that'll keep it from being quite so scratchy. Okay, so I remember who was asking the question. So if you right click on this cycle plot sheet, what I did is I right clicked on cycle plot and chose duplicate. And then from there, I took the year field from the columns and I moved it to the rows. And then I moved the count of rat sightings from the rows to the color. And we got something like that. Okay, any other questions? How's the scratchiness of the mouse? Is it better, Luke? Okay, much better. Right. Okay, no other questions. Okay, so we've got a couple of time series visualizations here. I can't really think of too many more that might be all that interesting. Let's see. Yeah, we'll leave it like that for now. So we've kind of answered the when part of our analysis. So the next thing we probably want to answer is where. So where are the rats? So we have a couple of different fields here. If I double click on the incident zip field, you'll see, at least for me, for those of you that are in the US, it probably populates this automatically, because your region on your computer will be set to United States. But if you're like me and your region is not set to the United States, what you'll want to do on the bottom right-hand side, you'll see this little indicator that says 205 unknown. So click on that. And it'll bring up this, this other little window where we can sort of correct it. Click on the Edit Locations button. And at the top where it says country, change it from United Kingdom to USA. And you do not have to sing the national anthem while you do that. You can just change it to USA. Hit OK. And so it looks pretty good, except we have this one really, really weird outlier somewhere in more like upstate New York. So we don't want that one. OK. So what I'm interested in is I want to know a bit more about this particular data point. So I'm going to click on that data point, and you'll see this little toolbar comes up, or this little in the tooltip. You'll see a little spreadsheet icon on the right-hand side of that. So I'm going to click on that. It tells us the latitude and longitude and the zip code. And down the bottom, you'll see two buttons. One says summary and one says full data. So I'm going to click on full data. And it looks like we have two fields here, and the zip code is just put in as 12345. So somebody probably didn't feel like, whoever took the phone call probably didn't feel like typing in the correct zip code, or maybe the person wouldn't give it to them. So they just put in 12345 instead. Okay, no big deal. So let's leave that for now, but I don't really like, no, we can leave it like that. So let's right click on that point. And then go ahead and choose exclude, which is about 3/4 of the way down. There we go. And now we've zoomed in on the zip codes within New York City. All this tells me right now is where the zip codes are. It doesn't tell us how many rats there are. So let's take the rat sightings count field from our measures section and move that to the size shelf. All right, and now we get something a bit more interesting. We can see there's, over here in, this is Brooklyn, You can see there's more rat sightings over there. I suspect these are probably like population centers if I had to guess. I want to make these dots a bit bigger though. So I'm going to click on the size shelf. And I'm just going to slide my little indicator over to that next notch and see what it looks like. Okay, not too bad. Let's click on the color shelf. And let's go ahead and reduce the opacity then. So you'll see this opacity right here where it says 100%. I'm just going to type in a 7, maybe make it like 70%. So I just want to make them a bit see-through. And we get something like that. So this is our, I'm going to rename the sheet as rat sightings by zip code. So again, it's just aggregated the data to the zip code level. Now, one of the things that I like to do is because we can layer our data in Tableau, I don't really want to see a background map, but I still want to see the zip codes. So like I want to see kind of the borders of the zip code. So I'm going to take my, incident zip field on the left-hand side. And if you drag that on top of the map, you'll see this little section here that says add a marks layer. So drop that on there. And you'll see we just get a bunch of dots. It looks a bit weird. On the marks card now, you'll see you have something called incident zip 2. So on that incident zip 2, let's change the mark type from automatic to a map. And you'll see we now get kind of the zip codes in the background. But I want my circles in front of the zip codes. So I'm going to drag this first card below the other one. So now incident zip 2 should be at the bottom. And now my zip code, my circles are in front of my zip codes. Okay, probably nothing particularly interesting, but I'm going to clean this map up a bit now. So I'm going to right click somewhere in the map. It doesn't matter where. I'm going to choose map layers. So the second from the bottom option. And you have this section at the top for the background. I'm going to drag the washout all the way to the right to make it 100%. And there we go. So now we've gotten rid of the background of the map. On my incident zip 2 field on the marks card, I'm going to go ahead and click on the color shelf. And I'm going to set my, let's see, I'm going to set my border to maybe like a light gray. And I'm going to set the color to white. There we go. So now I can just see the borders of my zip codes. Maybe I'll make it the border even a slightly lighter color gray. I just want it kind of there for reference. But notice now we don't have all the distraction of all of the other states and the water and all of that. We can just see a nice clear view of the map. Okay, so I like how that looks. Let's go to the other incident zip field on the marks card. That's the one that's the circles, and it should have the rat sightings count on the size. On the left-hand side, if this map layers section is open, click on the X to close that, and that gets us back to our data pane. And I'm going to drag the rat sightings count field from the left-hand side onto the color as well. And we can see it gave us blue. Let's click on the color shelf and let's change, click on edit colors. And let's change our palette to gray, the same one we chose for the heat map. Hit OK. So again, what I did there is I dragged the rat sightings count field onto the color shelf. Click on the color shelf. Choose edit colors and choose gray. Now what we've done is we've done something called double encoding. So we're showing you kind of where the concentrations of rats are by the color, and also kind of the volume of them by the size of the circle. So each circle is represented by the same measure in 2 different ways, both the size and color. Okay, so I like this one. So maybe I'll color that one green as well, color that sheet green. It might be a keeper. And let's choose a new sheet. What I want to do this time is I see we have a latitude and longitude for each of the sightings. And these are both down in the measures section, so it's below this green line. So just watch for now. You don't have to follow this part here, but if I double click on latitude and double click on longitude, I do get a map. But notice the fields on my columns. So these fields here on the columns and the rows, notice how those both say average in front of them. Because these fields were measures, Tableau defaulted those to be aggregations, but I don't want that. So I'm going to just hit undo twice and get back to our blank sheet. I'm going to take my latitude field and I'm going to drag it up to the dimensions. I'm going to take my longitude field and also move that up to the dimensions. And now if I double click on latitude, double click on longitude, it's going to take a second because it's now trying to draw 95,000 marks. This might not have been the best idea. Okay, there we go. So we can see a map of all of the rats. I'm going to click on the color shelf. Let's hopefully, is anybody still waiting for theirs to render? Depends on your computer speed, I guess. Okay. On the marks card, let's change the mark type from automatic to density, the bottom option. And you'll see we're now getting these kind of like heat map look kind of things. I'm going to now click on the color shelf and change the color from automatic to, let's choose something like, how about density red dark? Let's see how that looks. Oh, sorry, I chose the wrong one. Density red dark. Okay, so we get something like that. It looks like kind of fire. I'm going to then click on the size shelf and I'm going to reduce the size down to that left-hand tick. Okay, and now we can see the concentrations a bit better. So kind of pick your poison here. You can, I like both of them. I like the rat sightings by zip code. I think this one's a bit cleaner, but I think the one with the density map looks a bit more interesting. All right, so let's rename this sheet as our density map. And this might be a potential one we want to keep as well. So I'm going to right click on that and choose and change the color to green. So far I have 5 sheets. I know that's going to be too many for my dashboard, but I'll have to pick and choose later as I think about how I want to build it. Okay. So click on the new worksheet button, which should be just to the right of the sheet we just created. And now let's see what some of these other fields have here. So location type. Let's drag location type to the rows. And we can see we've got things like family dwellings, different size apartments, beaches, hospitals, etc. Let's drag the rat sightings count field to the columns. And right above the rat sightings count field on the columns, you should see a sort descending button. So click on that. And now we can see, it looks like the most common place to, or the place where rats have been sighted most frequently is in 3+ family apartment buildings. Okay, so probably like sky rises, something like that. But all I'm interested in here is the top 10 locations. On this location type field on the rows, I want you to click on the triangle and choose the filter option. We have 4 tabs across the top: general, wildcard, condition, and top. On the general tab, choose the use all option. That just makes sure that all of them are always selected. And then go across to the button that says top. Choose the by field option, and Tableau automatically populated the measure in there for it. So it's in the top 10 rat sightings count. Hit OK. And now you can see we have 10 marks in the view, or 10 rows. Now I want to make sure that whenever I put an action in the dashboard, let's say I want to filter to a specific year, I want my top 10 to make sure that it updates each time. So to do that, I need to go onto this year field on the filter shelf, and I need to choose this add to context option. It can be a bit complicated, but basically what that means is Tableau will first filter the year, and then it will filter the location type. So we want to filter the years before we pick the top 10. That's all that that's doing right now. I'm going to click on the color shelf, and I'm going to choose maybe a dark color to kind of match the theme that we're going with. If I want to see the labels on the ends of the lines or on the ends of the bars, next to the option, it says standard on the toolbar across the top. Let's choose, instead of the pin, let's choose the T that has the dotted line around it. That's just going to turn the text on. This is going to help us clean up the view a bit. I'm going to now right click on the axis, and I'm going to uncheck show header. I don't need both the axis and the labels on the ends of the bars, so I'm going to choose to hide the header. All right, and let's rename this sheet locations with the most rats, the most rat sightings. All right, let's click and let's choose another new sheet. And maybe somebody that lives in New York, well, I can figure this out. What I'm interested in is if we looked at rat sightings by borough, but I don't know if a zip code can exist in more than one borough. So let me just show you, you just watch for now. I'm going to drag the incident zip code. What I want to find out is, are there any zip codes that cross the boundaries of a borough? So all I'm doing here is I'm putting the zip code on the rows. You don't have to do this here, but and I'm going to right click and drag the borough to the text. Oops, sorry, wrong thing there. I'm going to make it account distinct. Okay, so null. I just want to see if there's any, yeah, so some of these zip codes cross boroughs. Okay, so I don't want to do anything with this, so I'm going to click on the clear sheet button. So make sure you're on a blank sheet. And let's see what other types of fields we have here. So address type. Okay, so that's an intersection a lat long. Okay, that's not very useful, so I'm going to hit undo. We could maybe drag the borough field onto the rows. And let's put the rat sightings count onto the columns. And sort descending. Okay, so we have our 5 boroughs of New York. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to kind of apply some of the same steps that I did in the previous sheet. So I'm going to click on the color shelf. I'm going to choose the same color it chose before. And I'm going to click on that little T that's above our column shelf to show the labels. I'm going to then right click on the axis and uncheck show header. Okay, so Edna has a question. What happens if we don't make year the context filters? When is it required to convert a filter to a context filter? That's a great question, Edna. So if I go back here to our locations, let me just show you this with a demo. So you see we have 10 records here right now. Let me remove the year from context. And I'm going to have to try to play with something here to see if we can get it to work. Let me see. I'm going to drag the address type. You don't have to do this. I'm trying to just demo this for you. So let's choose block face, for example. And now we have a different list of 10. So if I undo and redo, we probably have a different list of 10. So that might not have been a good example. It's kind of hard to tell here. Actually, why don't I just undo the sort? So let me clear the sort. And okay, so we have those, we see these are in alphabetical order now, so it might be a bit easier to see. So if I choose intersection and hit apply, okay, I still have the same 10. This is good, there we go. So when I choose lat long, notice I only have 8 rows now. So what's happened here is Tableau is applying all of these filters together. So it's saying, okay, give me the combination of, so we want to look at all of the years except 2022. We want to look at the lat long address type, and of all of those, which ones were in the top 10. So it's kind of combining those filters together. But if I take this address type field and I add it to context, I now get 10, or I have 9 marks. Okay, so there must only be 9. And then I need to take the year field and also add that to context. Now we only have 9 because there's only 9 for that location type. But essentially what's happening now is Tableau is first filtering the address type. It's also filtering the year. And then after it does that, it finds the top 10. So that's what a context filter it does. It just forces a filter to happen before the top 10 filter. Hopefully that answers your question. It's a bit of a complicated, but hopefully I didn't make it cause too many problems there. So again, I like this sheet, so I'm going to make that one green. All right, so going back over here, so we have our rat sightings by borough. So let's call this rat sightings by borough. And I have these two. One's called unspecified, and the other one's null. So I'm just going to highlight both of those. And when my tooltip, when you hover over those and the tooltip comes up, I'm just going to choose the exclude option because I just want to see my 5 boroughs. Okay, I'm not going to worry about doing any formatting or anything on this on this session. So we can maybe do that another time. Right, so I think that probably is about all we could maybe do with this data set here. So let me just have a quick look at some of the other fields that we have here. So complaint type, that's just rodent. So that's all one record descriptor, rat sightings. And I think status is just going to be assigned open, close. I'm pretty sure almost all of these are closed. Yeah, so that's not particularly interesting. Okay, so we've created kind of all of the sheets that we might be interested in. I'm going to also color the rat sightings by borough in green. So I have all of these things created, these sheets created. I need to decide which ones I want to use. So what I'm going to do on the very bottom right-hand side here, so let me highlight my cursor. On the very bottom right-hand side of Tableau, you're going to see these 3 little buttons. One of them says show sheet sorter. It looks like 9 squares, like a tic-tac-toe board. So click on that, and now this gives us this view. And I like using this because I can now rearrange my sheets easier. So I know I want to keep my big number in there, so I'll leave that on the left-hand side. I know that I probably want to have my rat sightings by borough, so I'm going to just drag that one over to the left. I probably want to use my locations as well, so I'm going to drag that one to the left. Okay, and then as far as maps, should we stick with the density map or, so if you want the density map, raise your hand on the feedback. If you want the one that's by zip code, do a thumbs up. So hand up if you want the density map and thumbs up if you want the rat sightings by zip code. So I'll give you a second to do that. Nobody's going to answer. Oh, there we go. Helps if I look at the participant list. Okay, so I've got 4 thumbs up and 5 thumbs up. Only 4 now. Well, you took hers away. Okay, so I think I said thumbs up. Oh, now I forget which one I said was which. So density map was hand up, and I think rat sightings by zip code was thumbs. Zip code equals thumb up. Okay, thanks, Anne. So I'm going to drag that over to the left as well. And then as far as heat maps, I'm going to look at both of these again. So you can just choose the sheet at the bottom if you want. And so we have one that's by year and month, and then we have the one that's by weekday by month. I think I'm going to stick with the one that's by week. I think it's a bit more interesting because we can maybe use some of the dashboard actions or something like that. So I'm going to rename this sheet as, let's see, weekday versus month, something like that. I just want to give it a name so I remember what it is. And I'm going to drag that sheet over to the left-hand side. So if you're familiar with Excel, you can drag sheets in Tableau just like you can within Excel. All right, so on the bottom right now, I want you to click on the little new dashboard icon. And for now, we'll just leave it as the default size. I typically would use containers when I build a dashboard, but that'll take a lot of explaining. But there is a video on my YouTube channel for how I like to use containers, which I learned from Curtis Harris. But for now, we'll just do kind of a very simple layout. So the first thing I want to do is I want to put a title on my dashboard. So on the bottom left-hand side of your dashboard, you should see a little option that says show dashboard titles. So let's check that. I'm going to then double click on that field, that little object that popped up. I'm going to delete everything that's in there, and I'm going to call this rat sightings in New York City. All right, very, very simple. So now we have to decide the layout that we want. So let me, let's see, I'm just going to pull up a little tool here. Okay, so we're going to have, this tool is called Excalidraw, if you haven't used it before, but we're going to have kind of our dashboard here. We've got our title, which I'm going to put here. This is our title. All right. Let's see. Okay, that's good. And then we're going to have maybe our big numbers here. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, our big numbers. Let's maybe make that extra large. I'm just trying to kind of create a quick little layout of the dashboard. If I go back over, did we have any time series that we were going to use? So we did the heat map. Okay, yeah. So maybe what we'll do then is we'll put, I've lost all of my, here we go. Don't worry if you don't have this tool. I'm just gonna put in like a little heat map here that's gonna go there below our big number. And we'll put the map maybe. Is there a map here? I don't think I have a map. Okay, that's fine. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to draw. This is probably gonna turn out really, really bad. But maybe I'll put the map down here. So New York kind of looks something like this. Don't criticize my mapping or my drawing capabilities. And let's see. So then we have our 2 bar charts, and that the other things we wanted. So we've got our number of rat sightings. We have our heat map. And then we have our zip codes. Let's see, so that's our map. And then we have 2 bar charts. So we have, let's see, so we're gonna have 2 bar charts over here. So this is gonna be a relatively straightforward dashboard to build. So we're gonna have 1 bar chart here. And then a second one below. So our dashboard is gonna end up looking something like this. But just throwing some objects onto a canvas like this kind of helps you picture what it's going to look like without a whole lot of commitment. Okay, so let's go back to Tableau, go to our dashboard, and let's see, we wanted to have our big number on there. So hover over the sheet until you see it's the correct one and drag that into the view, but below the rat sightings of New York title. And we have our big number there. Okay, so on that big number, I want you to right click on the title of that sheet and choose hide title. And then in the view at the top where it says standard, change that to entire view. This is just going to center it, or it didn't center it though, did it? Okay. Let's just leave it for now. We can fix that later. So we have our big number. So below that, we want to put our heat map. So grab your heat map and drag it below that. And then I'm going to go ahead and hide the title for that as well. And I'm going to put my rat sightings by zip code underneath of that. Maybe I should put it, maybe I'll put it just to the right of it. Maybe that's a bit better. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll figure it out. And then I'm going to hide the title for that. So we're just cleaning up the view a bit. Okay, so this is where it gets a bit tricky. So this is where it can be a bit difficult to lay things out in Tableau. So what I'm going to do now is I want you to click on this this section on the, no, let's leave it there for now. Yeah, this section on the right hand side where these legends are. So kind of click below them until you see kind of a blue box that's a container. And then I want you to click on the X on that container, on that blue object that says remove from dashboard. So click on that and then choose the delete containers option. Okay, so we've got something that looks, I don't know, looks okay, not great. And now what we want to do is we want to have, if I go back here, we wanted to have our two bar charts over here on the right-hand side. So to do that, let's first grab the, well, I'm going to cheat a bit here. I'm going to take a blank object and I'm going to put that to the right of our big numbers. So I'm I should have 4 objects in the view now. I'm going to then grab my rat sightings by Borough and I'm going to put that to the right of that blank object. And then I'm going to grab my locations with the most rat sightings and I'm going to put that to the right of the map. Okay, so it doesn't look particularly great. Actually, it looks kind of bad. But we'll do a bit of cleanup here and see how far we can get. So choose the rat sightings by Borough sheet. And when you choose that sheet, click on the option at the top that allows you to fit the view. So instead of making it standard, let's choose entire view. And that's just going to stretch the bar chart out a bit. And do the same thing with the sheet below that, the locations with the most rat sightings. So change that from standard to entire view. It's just filling up the space. Okay, so now these sheets are really, really squished. So on my locations with the most rat sightings sheet, you'll see it has this gray border around it. I want you to grab the left-hand side of that. You should see it turn into a left and right arrow. And I'm just going to drag that over a bit until you kind of get it, the sort of the look that you want. Maybe I'll even drag it over, you know, as something like that. Now for me, it shrunk my map down a lot, which doesn't look particularly good. So I'm going to click on my heat map now, and I'm going to do the same thing there. I'm going to drag this one over to the right, and we get something like that. Click on the big number sheet, and this time we want to go to the bottom of that one until it turns into an up and down arrow. Drag that one up, and now we get something like that. So you can see this view is really starting to fall apart. So I haven't done a very good job of designing this. So we're going to need to probably move a few things around. So this is where containers would be much, much more helpful. Okay, so let's see if we can take the map and move it below the heat map. So click on the map sheet. And at the top of it, you'll see kind of the thicker gray bar with the 2 white lines going through it. If you hover over that, your cursor should turn into a cross. Click on that object, and we want to move it below the heat map. Okay. Now for me, on the map itself, notice how I have this little pin that's pushed here. So I'm going to click that pin to kind of reset that. So Eric, you have a question? Eric, you can unmute yourself? No? Okay. Right, so we have something like that. So that's okay. Maybe I'll drag this over a bit toward the middle. So 2 participants raise their hands now. Okay, so who, can somebody?
Hi, Jason.
Jason.
Couldn't you also unpin the, like, not have it not locked in.
Could
So
I
that-
have it so it will never lock in?
Yeah, so like
Mhm.
the heat map, you could just resize it however you want.
Right?
So it's not proportionally locked in.
Yeah. So do you mean, okay, so which sheet are you referring to, the heat map or the map itself?
Uh the map itself.
Okay, so you want that to stay this size no matter how big I make the heat map?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I like the size like it is now, for example,
Mhm.
I can click on this pin
Mhm.
and that'll fix the size of it. So now if I drag up the heat map, that will still stay the same size.
Okay.
Yeah. But I wanted to, the reason I unpinned it is because I wanted to kind of maximize the space there.
Got it.
Okay, so let's see, what else can we do here? So we still have a bit of a mess. So I'm going to click on my my rat sightings by borough sheet, and I'm going to see if I can move that somehow down into this section. So I'm going to grab the top of it. Okay, there we go. So if I put it above the locations with the most rat sightings. All right, so now we're in business, I think, here. So that looks a bit better. I'm going to then click on my big number, and I'm going to drag that sheet just kind of all the way over to the just over to the left somewhere. And we get something like that. The only thing I don't like here is I now have this big white space on the upper right hand side there. So I'm going to do something a bit different, I think. I'm going to click on this blank object. Actually, no, I'm going to click on the title. And on the grabber for the title, so if you go to the kind of thicker gray area with the two white lines, so it turns into a cross, I want you to grab that and put it to the left of the big number. So we're going to kind of have the title on one side and the big number next to it. And then click on the big number sheet. Let's make that wider. And then let's click on the sheet with the object with our title and make that wider as well. Okay, so we can maybe make that go across just to give it enough room. Okay, something like that. I now no longer need this blank object here on the upper right, so I'm going to close that. Okay, so I don't love it, but that's okay. So I want to kind of shrink up that space at the top. So I'm going to click on either the title or the big number. And I'm going to drag those up so that they kind of occupy the space up. Okay, that's a bit better. So you can sort of play around with it until you get it kind of the size you want. So for example, maybe I want this title to be a bigger font or something, right? So maybe I'll make it 24 so it fits or something like that. So 182,000 rat sightings in New York. All right, I'm going to sort of just kind of start. This is where I usually spend way too much time, is playing around with the objects. So the last thing I want to do here is I think I want to add a bit of, well, no, I need to probably clean up my map a bit because everything is so crowded right now with all of the circles. So I'm going to go back to my sheet that has the rat sightings by zip code. And on the marks card, choose the incident zip, that is the automatic or the circle. I'm going to click on the size shelf and I'm going to drag that back down to the first notch. And now it doesn't look great here, but I think when we go back to the dashboard, it's going to look a bit better. Okay, so that's a bit better. I still don't love it, but it's better. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to add a bit of interactivity. So let's say that I want my user to be able to click on, let's say Mondays in July and have everything update. So I'm going to click on, let's just choose this sheet, the heat map sheet. So we get, I'm clicking above the word weekday, kind of in the white space above the word weekday. And you should get a gray border around that sheet now. On the right-hand side, you'll then see this little funnel. So click on that funnel and it'll apply. Anytime you click on something in that sheet now, it will apply to all of the other sheets. So this is where our context filtering is going to become important on the locations with the most rat sightings. So it looks like Mondays in July are the most frequent sightings. So let's click on that. And we can see all of our fields update. Maybe we choose Thursdays in April, whatever. You get these different things. Now, this chart on the bottom right, the locations with the most rat sightings, notice how the top 10 locations, the names don't change, but that doesn't mean that another location isn't in the top 10. So let me explain to you what I mean there. So click on the locations with the most rat sightings, and then go to that sheet, or you can just pick it from the bottom of your tabs. So we have our year field in the filters. Well, let's go ahead and you'll see that we now have this filter called action. It's in italics. I want you to click on the little drop down for that and add that to context. And now anytime we filter, it will make sure that this is always the top 10. So if we go back to our dashboard, we could maybe click on Sundays in January. Well, oops, my map got resized. Maybe I want to look at all Sundays. I could click on the word Sunday, and that's going to add all of my Sundays together. If I want to look at all of December, I could see all of December together. All right. So I think we're pretty close to done here, but I still feel like there's a bit of wasted space up here on the upper right. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a really small line chart called a spark line. And we're going to kind of see what the patterns are in the data, but we're going to put it next to this big number. So let's create a new sheet. And what I want you to do is I want you to hold your right mouse button down, or if you're on a Mac, you want to hold down the Option key. And you want to drag Create Date to the columns. And we're going to get this other box that pops up. I'm not going to explain all of this. But what we want to do is down here in the kind of bottom section, we see we have quarter, but it's in green. So it's the fifth one from the bottom. So we're going to look at the quarterly rat sightings. Let's click OK. And let's drag the rat sightings count to the rows. Okay, so we get something like that. Let's see what this looks like if we put it on the dashboard. So I'm going to go back to my dashboard. I'm going to grab my new sheet and I'm going to put it just to the right of my big number. So I want it to be nice and small. But for me, I can't see anything yet. So I need to hide the title. Okay, so it still doesn't look particularly good. You see everything's probably really squashed for you. So where it says quarter of created date, just right click there. And let's uncheck the option that says show header. And that's going to force the chart to fill up this. It's going to kind of give you more breathing room. And then let's right click on the axis on the left-hand side and uncheck show header. And now we have a nice little spark line. Or it's just a small line chart. It's not really a spark line. I'm going to go back to that sheet and I'm going to change the color to that same color I've been using before. So I've been using black. All right, so for me, the numbers are, it's all pound signs now because the number, the text of the number doesn't fit. So I'm just going to play around with some of my formatting here. So I'm going to maybe make this maybe 18 point. There we go, rat sightings in New York City.